Hello, my name is Brian Smolsky. I'm the athletic director here at Northville High School. We like to do athletic parent meetings before each season. So one in the fall, one in the winter, and one in the spring. With COVID-19 and our situation that we have going on, this will be my first video one. I will be honest and say this is my actually third attempt at this afternoon. First one, the phone rang. Second time, I forgot to hit share my screen, so the slideshow wasn't up. So we're going to give this a third time. I apologize if I repeat myself, as I may forget what I've said in one versus the other. All right, so let's give this a try. Leadership team here at Northville High School. Mr. Koski is our principal, and then we have 4 grade level assistant principals for those grades, and then the athletic department consists of myself, and then Mrs. Lamerson, our administrative assistant. Athletics has 3 governing bodies that we look to for rules, regulations, policy, guidelines, and such. You'll hear me talk a lot about the Michigan High School Athletic Association today because of the COVID-19 guidelines. And then we also belong to a league, the Kensington Lakes Athletic Association, where we follow their bylaws and scheduling. And then lastly, Northville Public Schools, we follow our policy and guidelines for athletics. The big question, and is probably a lot of information a lot of people probably want, is about COVID-19, those updates and guidelines. So where we're at right now with fall sports and COVID-19 and the guidelines. So for fall sports, football currently has been postponed until March. I understand that also has an effect on sideline cheer, pom, band, competitive dance, and all those other performing groups. With that said, I've talked to cheer and pom, and some of them may try to continue this fall, which is okay, as long as they follow the guidelines, and may perform at a soccer or volleyball game. With the understanding that, and I'll talk about this a little later, those groups may not be permitted to attend those events, and I'll get into that a little bit down the presentation. Currently, golf, cross country, and tennis are permitted to go with practice and competitions. Golf has had 4 matches already. Tennis had our first home event last Friday. All of that went very well. Volleyball, swim, and soccer are the 3 that are sort of in limbo right now. Those 3 are in limbo because they are permitted to practice, but they cannot compete, and they can only practice outside at this time. The MHSAA has said they have given the clearance to start competitions, but the governor must come out with a new executive order saying that before we can do that. So that is sort of where we're waiting at with those 3. Equestrian outside is up and running with their guidelines and safety measures for COVID. Mountain biking is also up and running with their competitions and following the COVID-19 outdoor guidelines. All right, so just a few things I want to make sure everyone is aware of that needs to be happening. Our screening process, we did that through the entire summer, and I want to thank everyone, student athletes, parents, 1 for being patient, and 2 for following these guidelines. But this student athlete link that you can see on the PowerPoint should be filled out every day on the day of the workouts or practices. And then what we do is Mrs. Lamerson then downloads it into a Google Doc. Google Doc is shared with coaches, and coaches then should take attendance from that form. If an athlete is not on that form, they are not permitted to be on campus. Employees also fill out something like this too to come to school. So this is very important, just for 1, checking symptoms, and 2, just having a screening process in case anyone does come down with symptoms. We can go back and check who was there, who wasn't there. So very important. That is done every day on the day of those workouts. Face covering and mask. MHSAA says they must be worn at all times unless participating. We do need to get a little better at this with when we walk to practice, leaving practice, when we gather in groups, and we're not working out or doing cardio activity or participating, those masks should be on. So we really should have it with us at all times. And then when we are not participating, we want to put that back on. Social distancing, we must be keeping that 6 feet social distance unless participating. So unless we're in a game, like soccer where it may not be possible, all other times we should keep our distance 6 feet. Again, limiting that exposure and just one of those safety measures we want to take to try to keep our kids as safe as possible. Okay, what happens if someone is exposed to COVID-19 or they test positive? If someone is exposed to COVID-19, so for example, if we have an athlete who ends up having someone that lives with them test positive for COVID, in that circumstance, that athlete that has been exposed will need to quarantine for the next 14 days. So he or she will not be able to come to practice. The rest of the team, while we will notify them, they can continue to come to practice, continue to work out. They'll just fill out the screener. If then they have symptoms, then we just ask that you monitor that. Let us know if anyone's ever having any symptoms. When they fill that out on the screener, they should not be coming to practice. Now, if someone tests positive, so if we have an athlete or a team member or a coach on a team test positive for COVID-19, depending on the situation, that team could possibly have to quarantine for 14 days, if not more. So again, if an athlete tests positive, once we get all the information, who they've been in close contact with and such, then it's decided how many of the athletes will need to quarantine for 14 days. Most likely, because teams are so close and interact all the time, it's going to be the entire team for 14 days. Another reason why masking and social distance and who are we coming to practice with are all important things. We want to keep that social distance so we don't have to have a team sit out for 14 days, at the very least 14 days. Because if there's someone else on the team tests positive, it's going to then extend. So something very serious to keep in mind, and that's why those guidelines are important. In terms of if you have contests in those 14 days, the MHSAA says that you would look at those as acts of God or a weather delay. So we would treat those just like a rainout, and we would reschedule it when and if possible to play. Spectators and passes, talked a little bit about this when we first started. As of right now, we're allowed 100, I don't want to say spectators, 100 people at an event. So for example, we hosted our first tennis match last Friday, and we could have 100 people there. This includes players, coaches, game management, everyone involved. So, and the 100 adds up quickly when you add players. So last Friday, Northville had 20 tennis players. North Farmington had 18, 2 coaches on each side. So now we're up to 4 coaches. And then we allowed 2 parents or guardians for every Northville athlete. And then we only allowed 1 guardian for North Farmington athlete. And that we got to 100. So again, that's when I talked about a little bit about cheer and pom and performing at events and the possibility of soccer. We, depending on what that number is, will really determine who we can have at games and who we can't have at games. One thing we did this past spring, summer, in anticipation of these limited numbers, limited to no fans, is we have the ability to stream games now at Tom Holzer Field and in the gym. Also have another system that is scheduled to go up at the soccer field, but currently I need to get some equipment installed or pole installed to be able to make that happen. So we will stream as many events as possible as fans, 1, may not feel safe coming, and 2, people out of state, and then finally 3, depending on what the MHSA says, we may not be allowed to have fans. So we will keep you updated on that and how that works moving forward. Concessions are currently closed. There will be no outdoor concessions, indoor concessions at events right now. Equipment, food, drink. So we shouldn't be sharing any equipment. I know we do in some sports with balls and things like that, and coaches know we need to sanitize those items if they're shared. no community water. So we've asked all the athletes to bring their own water. We do have water bottles here in case someone forgets or runs out. We will provide that with them. Food, tennis, and I keep referring to tennis because we had a match on Friday, but food tables and snacks and pasta parties, and we can't do any of those right now. So all the food has to be individual wrapped. Individuals should be bringing it. We want to take all that sharing stuff out right now, just to, again, limit that exposure. Gatherings, pasta parties, team bondings, as much as possible, we don't want to do those right now. We want to leave after events, practices, and competitions, and just limit that. If we do gather, all those guidelines should be followed. So it should be outside, less than 100 people, mask on the entire time, and social distance the entire time. I will continue to update with the COVID-19 stuff as we get more updates. Michigan High School Athletic Association has said they are in this spot until the governor's office gives an update. So once they get that, then we will move on and see where we're going to go with swim, soccer, and volleyball. Just Northville Athletics by the numbers. Obviously, we do a lot of things in this office. We have 60 plus teams, which I think is absolutely awesome. Lots of opportunity for our kids here. Lots of different things, from mountain biking to equestrian to rowing to the traditional sports. So again, take advantage of all those things. I will say this, with this being this busy, best way to reach me is probably by email. I'll give that at the end of the presentation, but I check that more often than I can get to my phone messages. Core values. So we have 4 core values here in the athletic department that sort of guide us in what we're trying to do. 1, academics, obviously, is our first priority. We're student first, athlete second. And then second, we want to be competitive. We want to develop competitors and set measurable standards and goals that our teams can reach. Third, leadership. We stress that there's 5 different forms of leadership, from sorry, phone again, but we're going to keep rolling. From performance leaders to locker room leaders, and things like that. So we stress the coaches to celebrate all those. And then the last core value, community and school spirit, really stress the importance of building a positive culture and positive relationships with our kids. Our teams can't be successful and succeed if we're not doing those things to start off. And then also in this core value, really stress the importance of multi-sport athletes. This picture is a board of all of our 3-sport athletes last year. It will be updated every year. So in the spring of 2021, we'll take those 4 plaques down, hang them up in a hallway, and then the new plaques will go up. And my thought and hope with this board is kids will see this, they'll be motivated to try and play more than just 1 or 2 sports, but maybe 3. Mustang Leadership Council. Retired athletic director Mr. Macy started this a few years ago. This group consists of 2 to 4 representatives from each program at Northville. And we really have 3 primary goals here. We want to build leadership goals on and off the field. We want to build school spirit here and enrich our community through service and projects. We've gotten started with this year. We added an executive board. So there's 8 members on the executive board that I meet with twice a week to discuss things. And then the large group meeting, our first large group meeting, is going to be next week, where I just emailed all the kids Google Meet invites for that today that were nominated for this group. For me, I really enjoy this group because no longer coaching or being in the classroom, this gives me that closer connection to kids where I can build those positive relationships and get to know kids and get to know what they think and how can we improve and get better in the athletic department. Some important fall dates. Picture Day is this Wednesday, August 26th. Your coaches have your schedules. They also have order forms. They also have an email where you can do online ordering. Pictures will look different this year. There will be no team pictures. What they will do is they will have a green screen. Each kid will take an individual picture, and then they will go back and Photoshop kids in. Pay to participate, which I'll talk about in the next slide, is due on the 31st of this month for the teams that have started playing and competing. We are holding checks of teams that haven't started playing just until we're sure they're going to play, and then we'll move forward with that. So we don't have to do a lot of refunds. Pep rally, homecoming, that's been postponed. That will be more information on that stuff to come later. Some winter sports. So if your fall athlete plays a winter sport, there are the start dates for those. Obviously, those could change depending on the MHSA and the COVID-19 calendar, but those are the start dates for those at this time. A couple other things. Hall of Fame. We're starting a Hall of Fame at Northville this year. The first class has been selected. We're holding off on publishing that information until we have the date. We were going to do it at one of the football games this September. Obviously, with all the things going on, we've delayed that. And so possibly we will do it in the winter at a basketball game, or we may even push it until the spring 1 football season when we have a date for that. Spring sports, all spring sports scheduled to start March 15th. At this time, that obviously could be pushed back now with this addition to spring 1. I've received a lot of questions about overlap. Our kids going to have to make choices between traditional spring sports versus football. The MHSA has said no to that. They will. There may be a little overlap, but student athletes will not have to choose between one sport and another sport that they've never had to choose between before. So that is a good. Pay to participate, $350 for the year. It covers unlimited participation in school-funded sports. If you're not sure if your sport is school-funded or self-funded, you can reach out to your coaches. They'll be able to tell you that. Fees and passes. Talked a little bit about this with the Spectators, but because we don't know what Spectators are going to look like, if fans are going to be limited, if we're not all going to be, if we're even going to be allowed to have fans. So we've delayed selling the family passes from the Booster Club, just because I hate it if we would have sold a bunch, then all of a sudden can't get in. I'd hate for someone to walk up with a pass and they can't get in because we're only allowing parents or because we're not allowing fans. When we do get back to having fans and spectators and all that good stuff, admission is $5 for each of those things. Behavior and discipline. So it's just important to talk to your athletes about with behavior and discipline. Athletics is a privilege. It's not a right. With school discipline, if we do get in trouble in school, there will be consequences on the athletic end of things. Suggest that you check out the Northville High School Athletic Handbook. It sort of goes through those things in here. So that would be important to take a look at with your student athlete, just so they're aware of all those things. Social media, Twitter, Facebook, GroupMe, all the Snapchat, all of those things. Again, just remind your student athlete, all of those things, they're representing themselves, their family, their high school, their athletic teams. So be appropriate, understand there's consequences for those if there are inappropriate things out there. And then each group has individual team rules, and we expect those student athletes to follow those individual team rules. Academic eligibility. Grades here are checked every 10 weeks during the academic year. MHSA guidelines require a student athlete to pass 66% of their classes, and at Northville, you also must have a 1.67 overall GPA to participate. Those are checked every report card. 2 dates to really keep in mind for those. Semester 1 report card in January, semester 2 report card in June. If you don't meet those standards on those 2 report cards, you actually have to sit out the next 60 school days. So, for example, if you're a spring athlete and you're not eligible at semester 1, you cannot participate in the game. It's usually the first week of May. And then if you're a fall athlete and you're not eligible at semester 2 in June, you can't participate in a game the first 60 days of the school year, which is pretty much your entire fall season. One question I've gotten about eligibility with the online stuff and all virtual and things like that. If you selected to be all virtual this year, you can still play sports and you are still eligible as long as those online courses are taught through Northville High School and those grades go on your Northville High School transcript. If you choose to leave Northville High School to go to an all online academy, you are not eligible to play sports at Northville High School. So if you have any questions about the online stuff and just want to double check, feel free to give me a call or shoot me an email and I will get back to you about that. Transportation, the district provides transportation to its best of its ability, depending on availability of vehicles, drivers, scheduling considerations, and other factors. With COVID-19, transportation this fall is going to be very limited. Just another one of those things, if we can limit exposure, that's what we're going to do. Instead of putting 30, 40 kids on a bus with masks, if it's possible to have parents transport, that is what we're going to do moving forward right now at this point with transportation. Security, weather, schedule changes with security. Just remind your student athletes, it's amazing how you walk around and you see bags and things laying around. Remind them to lock their stuff up. Weather and schedule changes, it really is best to follow us on Twitter, and that's at the end of the slideshow, so you'll be able to write that down. But we put all those updates on Twitter. We listserv things out also, and then they're on our website. But Twitter is probably the most, we get information out on that as soon as possible, whether it's a retweet or a tweet from our office. Player, parent, coach communication. Again, this is in this handbook, but just some issues not appropriate to discuss with coaches. 1, playing time. 2, team strategy. 3, play calling. 4, other student participants. So those are sort of off limits. We don't want to discuss those. No issue with a student athlete asking a coach, hey, what do I need to show in practice to earn more playing time? That's an okay conversation in terms of asking what they need to work on. Also, when we're upset about something, we ask that you take 24 hours and the student athlete talk to the coach. And then the next step, if we're still not satisfied, would be parent, student athlete, and coach. And then if it's still an issue, I would come into the situation and be parent, student, coach, and athletic director. Again, if there's someone's safety, if we're worried about your son or daughter's safety, that would be a direct call to me right away. So this is more of those kind of issues that you might want to talk about. But student safety, please bring to my attention immediately. And again, having the student athlete talk to the coach first, I think, is a good life skill. Just did it with my son, Connor, who's going into 6th grade, trying out for a baseball team that he didn't make. And so, I called the coach, but then I had Connor talk to the coach, just asking what the coach thought he needed to work on this next year to improve on. So I think that's an important skill to teach our kids. Building a positive culture. So in athletics, coaches have to make a lot of tough decisions a lot of times in terms of playing times, playing strategy, things like that. We may not always agree with every decision that's made, but we are going to ask that you're respectful about those decisions, be supportive of your child's coaches, the program, officials, and Northville High School. The more positive we are, the more positive our student athletes are at practice, and the better experience we all have. A couple of messages from the Michigan High School Athletic Association. I would play them if we're in the auditorium doing this right now. Not going to attempt it to do, as this is, like I told you, my 3rd shot at this, so I don't want to mess anything up. One is just on sportsmanship with officials. The MHSAA, there is a shortage with officials, and so it's a growing concern. So just remember that officials are people. They are going to make mistakes, and obviously they're going to make bad calls from here to there. Just be respectful towards those officials. And then a video clip on them pushing multi-sport athletes, which I talked about earlier, and the importance of kids playing more than one sport. Hall of Fame, talk about that real quick. Again, we're starting that this year. The purpose of it is just to honor Northville High School's top student athletes, coaches, administrators, and teams. Looking forward to getting this started. I think it's going to be a great program with all the great tradition that we have here. Just our department information. Again, that's our website over on the left side, our Twitter. Again, if you could follow us on Twitter, I think you'll have the most up-to-date information. So if something gets canceled, it's going to be on there right away, and it's a good way to be updated with Northville athletics updates. Athletic trainer Cody does a great job. Works for MedSport, who we work with. If your son or daughter is ever injured, please reach out to Cody. He will point you in the right direction, whether it's coming to see him here or getting you into a clinic to see someone. Dealt with it this summer with my daughter getting a concussion. Cody was able to get her in the doctor's office in 2 days, and we were able to start that process. So again, does a great job. So reach out to him if you ever have any questions or concerns. And then lastly, here's our information, just my name, email, number, also Ms. Lamerson's contact information, and Cody's email. Thank you for taking probably 30 minutes or so to watch this. Don't hesitate to give me a call or shoot me an email if you have any questions after watching this. Looking forward to a great fall season. Cross country, golf, and tennis already out there competing and doing their thing. And, you know, we're in the holding pattern for volleyball, soccer, and swim and dive. I will, you know, lastly say, if the governor was to come out with an executive order tomorrow saying those are permitted, then those games and events would start right away. And we'll keep you updated with that. So again, thank you. And let me know if you have any questions. Looking forward to a great year.